after desire and aversion fall away. That sounds so final, complete, and well, I don't know how to say it. It sounds so final and complete. I mean, it's like there's nothing else that can or needs to be done here. And so when I saw that and it hit me that way, that was the first thing that I thought that I wanted to ask you. Like,
Mm.
is that really ever how it is for most of us when it comes to work around 4 and 5?
Such a good question. And it's one of those where it's really hard to say. mm, Everybody has their own way of phrasing things, and they have their own experiences of what they mean when they phrase things a certain way.
Sure.
And so it's a little bit difficult to say for sure what anybody experiences. I can say personally, what I experienced from doing all of that work is that I went from really, feeling like if I was craving something, that was like something I really had to have and or fight against. And it was like a real tug of war with that thing. Or if there was something that I really didn't want, it was really like a battle against it. And there were a few very clear shifting moments where it was just like, whoa, and something, seemed to like it felt like I've said before, like the windows opened up and it was just like this breeze blew through and it was like, whoa, okay. And there was like an insight quality of that.
Hmm.
Now, the um what I would say is what is different is there is still enjoyment of things, but there isn't a need for those things. If a
Hmm.
thought about something arises, it's no longer craving. It's just the mind creating some idea from something. Like I say in the book about it's basically like having a television advertising station in the head all the time, that it's always trying to sell us something.
Right.
It's something, it's either, it's going to promising to improve something or it's distracting us from something, but it's basically the mind is just running advertisements all the time. And it's a question of do you immediately run out and buy what is being advertised to you or not? And you can recognize, if somebody in your normal life came up to you and said, that you should, well, actually, this is funny because it reminds me, we were at a doctor's office recently, and um, the person who worked there was saying they had some years ago when they were in their 20s, uh, they had a patient who said they just came back from Denmark, and Denmark was lovely and really nice people. And if you ever get a chance, you should go there. And literally, this person, never having known anything about Denmark, had never traveled anywhere in the world, on their lunch break, bought tickets to Denmark on a whim,
Whoa.
just because this patient said that it was such a nice place, they should try it out and check it out. So that is like basically the level at which most of us operate with the thoughts in our mind. That the
Right.
mind says donut and the body goes, yeah, I should have a donut. Here we go. And there's like no question that I should have a pause there and maybe could choose or not whether to have the donut or, whether it has to be a foregone conclusion because it's there. So what we're talking about is that we recognize that aversion and craving don't actually exist. It's a certain pattern of thinking that comes in the mind. There's a certain pattern of sensation in the body. And there's a disconnect there, which we've talked about in the past, that once that is very clearly seen and felt in the body, like there is this true recognition that, oh, I never have to buy anything I see in another advertisement again. The mind can throw it out, but it is just a suggestion and you never need to actually do anything about that. So it's not to say that the mind will suddenly stop suggesting anything. The mind is going to
Right.
do what it does. Um, but you don't have to buy into it. Likewise, with aversion, it's all about our resistance to life, basically. I am feeling achy in my back. That's not a problem. The problem is my resistance. I don't want to feel achy in my back. I want to have a back that I don't even know is there because it feels so neutral. I don't even want to know I have a back. So that sets up that resistance. Okay, well, can you be okay just feeling an achiness in the back and not needing to do something to react to that or fix it or change it or make things better or can you live without that resistance? That can absolutely change. And so I think what I would say to if I was gonna, because again, I don't know exactly what she meant when she said it, because again, we
Right.
can't jump into somebody else's experience. If I was going to say
Right.
that, I might say when the belief in craving and aversion falls away, because I do believe that that belief, once you really clearly see that that's the case, is not coming back. And once you develop that toolkit of recognizing as it's happening, just these ads that are showing up in the mind and that ability to not have to jump on it and react to it, that equanimity that is there in its place, it keeps you from needing to do anything again. But it's not to say that, I think we all have so much conditioning that needs to be worked with and take a while. If you are somebody who were constantly conditioned to eating every time you got stressed, that feeling of like stress being a problem, you feel like you're stressed and then there's an urge to do the thing, there might still be like a reaching out for something, right? You might need to work with that and find out, okay, so I know I don't actually have to go to the refrigerator every time I feel stressed now. That was just a suggestion. Now I can work with just that feeling of stress. And there's a feeling of resistance to feeling that stress. Okay, well, now I can work with that resistance. Can I just feel stress in the body and be equanimous with that? So we can start to work with all the different aspects that create that feeling of resistance in the first place, or the feeling of craving in the first place. Um, the reason why we talk about the second fetter being so tied in with the fourth and the fifth is that craving and aversion don't really, well, they don't exist on their own, and they certainly don't quasi exist in a vacuum. They're coming about largely because we have this unresolved second fetter stuff that is prompting us to constantly try to make ourselves feel more comfortable by indulging in something or running away from what feels, miserable in the body.
So then, is it fair to say that we don't really, I don't know what the best language is to use. It all seems kind of poor to me, but is it fair to say that we haven't really seen through or dissolved Fetters 4 and 5 until we have done a sufficient amount of work with Fetter 2?
Well, yes and no. So the way that because with like Kevin and Christiane, the way they work with it, they don't really work with Fetter 2 at all, right? They use they use the sort of original Buddhist foundation that's just doubt, which is
Right.
like, doubt in the practice, doubt in our ability to become awake and all of that stuff. The way we work with it is more of Pernilla's invention, where we're tying in all of the therapy stuff that they don't work with in that form of working with the fetters. So because of that, when Kevin and Christiane talk about fetters 4 and 5, you have the primary sensation that comes up, right? So you're in any given situation, and there's like, somebody uh, says something to you at work that makes you feel a certain way, or you uh, get, you're yeah, you're out traveling and you're stressed, and so you go to eat something, to grab a snack or something like that. In the way that they work with it, they're only working with the reaction to the primary sensation. So the primary sensation is you're at work, somebody says, oh, you did a really terrible job on this, and you're gonna have to redo it, and you're gonna have to work all weekend to redo all this work that you just did, and you feel that immediate pang of something in the body.
Right.
4 and 5 is just what you do from that point on. The pang is there. The question is now, do you have to lash out and yell at the person? Do you have to pout? Do you have to, go through all these tirades in your mind about it? Do you have to turn and go get, a drink or something to numb yourself. All of that is the reactivity of 4 and 5. But it doesn't deal at all with the primary pang, with that primary sensation that comes about. So when you're stressed or when you have, feelings of yeah, all the emotional stuff, all the trauma, all that stuff that causes that primary sensation, it doesn't work with any of that. It's just how do we relate to it? Do we need to get angry? Do we need to eat our feelings away? Do we need to get drunk? Do we need to? Um, and so for that, you can clearly see no. But then you're just left sitting with whatever miserable sensations are there because you haven't actually worked with any of that yet. Right? If you haven't done any second fetter work, you can kind of condition yourself to be in a situation where no matter how uh, you know, miserable you are, how much your trauma is being activated, no matter how whatever comes up is up, you can condition yourself to just like being passive and not actively relating to it. But it still leaves you being a very traumatic, internally kind of reactive person. So with the second fetter stuff, we're working with all the things that we talk about all the time, where you're actually getting to the root of it. So why is that primary sensation even occurring in the first place? Is there a reason why somebody saying that you've done a terrible job hits you in a way that is so much harder than somebody else is like, yeah, that's all right. I've done better. I know I didn't do that great on it, or well, that's your opinion. There's a difference there. And so that is super, super relevant. Yes, it's good to work with the 4-5 side of things so that when somebody gives you a piece of critical or critique that you don't fly off the handle and throw a stapler at them. That's great. And even to have that like internal sense of I'm okay just feeling the uncomfortable sensations that come up when somebody criticizes me. That's great, super useful to have, really, really valuable. But the question is, still stands. Why do you have that particular reactivity in the first place? And can we work with
Right.
that?
Well,
So
and then the stories I've heard repeatedly over the last, oh, however many years is that, you get these people who they do the work, they get the results, and some of them are even, respected or revered teachers, and then next thing you know, they're either acting out badly or, and this is the one I've heard more of in recent years. They've done all this work. People are saying, this person has, they've done the work, they've gotten the results, but now they're in therapy.
yeah, exactly.
And there's nothing
Exactly.
wrong with that, but
No,
it just seems kind of cross purposes.
exactly. And that's why we work with it all together because it is all interconnected. I mean, you can't separate one part of the awakening path from anything else. It's all human life. There's literally it is what's creating all of it. The illusions that we take to be the self and craving and aversion and separation and all of those things are being created by this same system, which has been conditioned in a way. And the conditioning is part of it. So why not work with the conditioning as well? That is
Absolutely.
that's why we are seeing the world the way that it is.
So if you're going to sum it up, and I realize I realize what I'm asking, but if you're going to try to sum it up in a fairly succinct and very general way, kind of a one size fits all, how would you say a person, and I'm going to phrase this very carefully, might recognize that they have managed to cross that initial threshold with 4 and 5?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, I can speak from my own personal experience, which was there were a few decisive moments where when I was doing the Kevin and Christiane kind of work through I think there was I was feeling kind of reactive about somebody I felt had was like taking advantage of me in a way and I had felt this kind of like kind of gripping going on, and so I sat with that. And in one of those cases, I had one of those like, oh, like just insight moments of where that just fell away. And another one of the big ones was about I had this idea of lack. And I remember I was walking around the block and it was like this idea of like a lack of time, a lack of money, a lack of, and I had this like about that a lack can only exist in mental comparison to another time, right? Like you cannot experience lack as it is. You have to imagine something else which is here that's not actually here, and then compare the two basically. And there was such a jolting poof from that. And those and a couple other, there were definitely some other smaller things along the way. They basically shifted the scales so that I started to recognize what was really happening. That and it was also part of the doing the actual, investigation of what it felt like to be craving something, to actively be craving something, or to actively not want something. And doing those, it broke the sort of monolithic experience of craving into its parts so that I was able to recognize that it didn't really exist. And then from then on, it was like noticing, like I said about the television advertisements, that's just, I don't need anything to be different than it is. I don't need to have whatever. If I think of a brownie, I don't have to have a brownie. I can just recognize I just had a ghost flavor of a brownie in my mouth. I just saw an image of a brownie. How odd is that? And it doesn't need to go any further than that. There was like I had done a practice at one point where it was like I would felt like I wanted I forget, it was something from the freezer, and so I would pull it out and I would like like I was gonna have it, and I would put it on the table, and then I would put it back in the freezer, and there's this feeling of like no, it was like this little child that was like no 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 no, I want that. And so it was working with that. And it was just like being, hold on, there's this sensation here, there's that thing. How are they connected? And really breaking the whole thing down into recognizing that it's completely unnecessary. And so that just it took a bit of a while, but I think there was enough reconditioning that was happening while I was doing that work as well as, you know, having some really good insight moments where things just really the kind of paradigm just kind of shifts about how you see any of this stuff. So what I would say in general is you recognize the mind is still being a mind. It's still suggesting things, but do you need to actually follow through with any of those? Does it really feel like there's um, not just that you're not um, running off to get the donut, but does it feel like you are actively fighting against that urge to get the donut? Because that
Right.
still requires more investigation then. It should be this effortless falling away where you just realize that it's like, you know, you see a giraffe walk by on the TV. You don't have to go and get a giraffe. Like it doesn't equate. And the same thing can be for anything else that you once had cravings for. It doesn't have to be something that you have to fulfill. It's just a giraffe walking by on a TV screen. So it's really noting that, and then the aversive sense of, do you have to react to something? Can you be with the primary discomfort of somebody cutting you off in traffic or somebody, whatever your pet peeve is, everybody is different, but can you be with the primary discomfort of that without needing to jump to some other distraction or deflection or reaction? And if yes, then you're in good shape. But always stay mindful of it because these things can come back. The conditioning can keep coming back in different ways. And, I mean, we've talked to people who they feel like they've broken 4 and 5. They feel like they have had, these, but then they kind of stop being aware. They stop inquiring in some fashion because, you kind of get like, yeah, okay, I'm done. And then your old conditioning just keeps coming back again. And then you have that, well, I had it and then I lost it thing. It came back. Well, it didn't really come back. 4 and 5 never existed. Fetters don't exist, right?
Right.
It's not something that you have physically broken or gotten rid of. It's a pattern of thinking and a pattern of behavior which temporarily shifted, but you didn't continue with it long enough to make it a lifelong habit. Your old habitual patterns that you've been doing for decades just came in and, they re-strengthened. Those neural pathways have always been there. Now you have just, not done quite enough work to get to reinforce the new neural pathways, so the old ones took over again.
I think and this is really, I'm just going to be speaking for myself, and I recognize that some people may balk at how I'm saying this, but I'm saying this at least to myself this way for a particular reason. It seems like the wise attitude is to have one of you're never finished. If you're
Yeah,
still breathing, you're not done.
exactly. I agree 100%. Yeah, I think life is too unpredictable. The human biology is too unpredictable. There are too many influences and, too many causes and conditions throughout everything to believe that anything is going to stay the way that it is indefinitely. Plus the fact that we know permanence does not exist. Nothing is
Right.
permanent. We're in a constant state of evolution. Why would we think that, you can't go back to the way things were for decades, So yeah, I'm with you on that.